This is Terrence Andre Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions, coming to you with an article I read from Yahoo. California is in big trouble again. It seems that California, I did a video before about the cities that's already happening, that's having a housing issue. California's having trouble again, which doesn't surprise me, not only just due to the natural disaster they have, but financially this place is extremely precarious, to say the least. And just going to dive right into the article. It's got a chock full of nuggets. Title always catches my attention. 10 to 15 years ago, pundits like to speculate that California was on the verge of becoming a failed state. In the early years of the new century, the state suffered widespread blackouts thanks to a botched deregulation of its electricity market. Meanwhile, with long-standing ballot initiatives requiring a legislation supermajority to pass tax increases and education expenses ballooning, the state budget seemed permanently mirrored in the red. Arnold Schwarzenegger, governor at the time, managed to cobble together a deal to limit the deficits, but the Great Recession sent them soaring again. The collapse of the housing bubble hit California hard, pushing unemployment above 12%. Some commentators suggest that California's governance model, heavy on regulation and subject to the whims of ballot initiatives, could lose out to the more laissez-faire systems of states like Texas. California battled back. Under Schwarzenegger's successor, Jerry Brown, the state raised taxes on residents making more than $250,000 and bumped up the sales tax a bit. The new taxes on California's high earners, along with the recovery in the housing and stock markets and a new technology boom, helped push the state's budget back into the black. But California's victory over dysfunction may be short-lived. Earlier this month, California utility PGE Corp intentionally cut power to millions of residents, costing the state economy billions of dollars. The planned blackout was meant to keep power lines from sparking wildfires, which have raged across California with increasing fury in recent years. The monetary losses from these fires are staggering. Some estimates put them at $400 billion in 2018, almost a seventh of the state's gross domestic product. This includes health costs, lost property, lost jobs, decreased asset values, and migration out of the state. Meanwhile, PG&E's executives say the intermittent blackouts will continue, meaning that much of the state may no longer have reliable year-round electricity. Wow. Imagine being there and you don't even have year-round electricity. That will doubtless exert a further chilling effect on investment and property values. Fires aren't California's only problem. Thanks in large part to spiraling urban rents, the homeless population increased by 5.3% from 2010 to 2018. In a state that already has almost half of the nation's homeless. I didn't say that. Repeat that again. In a state that already has almost half of the nation's homeless. In Los Angeles and San Francisco, the crisis is especially acute, with destitute people in pitiful tent encampments crowding the sidewalks. Government pension costs are rising much faster in California than the rest of the nation. It goes back to the pensions again. Forces of cost-saving measures that are degrading the state's education system. These forces are driving Californians to move out of the state in increasing numbers. Population growth is trickling off and may soon go negative. Wow. Even the wealthy are moving away. A recent paper by economists Joshua Ra and Ryan Shayu found that out-immigration of top bracket taxpayers accelerated after the income tax hike of 2012. That's bound to put even more pressure on states' finances that rely so heavily on contributions from the top 1%. Just how much of the excess is due to tax hikes rather than the other factors is unclear, but Ruru and Sayu argue that tax avoidance plays a significant role. It's just important to point out, when they keep talking about taxing the rich just don't sit down to take it like anybody else. They move. They go to places where there's more favorable things for people who have wealth. This is just something to note, because when they keep going in these policies that you're going to just keep tax everyone into oblivion, people move. And with that, the population that's left are the ones who are usually receiving a lot of benefits or different aspects like that. I just wanted to point that out, because it's somehow, it's just not talked about enough that people just think that you can just tax somebody and just go and take it. People just don't function that way, man. That just it defies logic sometimes. So, not saying that that's not a case not to do something. I'm just saying that it's just important that people just move when people get overly taxed. So despite its heroic efforts and unprecedented degree of political unity, Democrats now have a supermajority in the state's legislature and the governor's office. California risks falling falling back into the dysfunctional path it seemed to be on in the early 2000s. Much of this is for reasons beyond the state's control. Climate change is exacerbating drought and wildfires. The red crisis in California cities is largely due to a structural shift in the U.S. economy as knowledge industries become more dominant. High-earning workers are crowding the cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles in order to be close to each other, driving rents up for everyone else. But California's political system is making it hard to respond to these pressures, thanks to a 1987 ballot initiative called Proposition 13. California cities have stringent limits on raising revenue from local property taxes. That forces the state to provide many services financing with hefty income taxes. Those are inherently more reliable than property taxes since wealthy taxpayers can move away, while property can't move, and since California's income taxes fluctuate a lot because they depend so much on the profits residents earn on volatile stock prices. It's crazy. Go down, the story continues. Meanwhile, despite one-party control of the state legislature, California has been unable to meaningfully address its housing crisis. Powerful local property owners prevent municipal governments from allowing new housing to accommodate the influx of workers from out of state, and they wield power at the state level too, as demonstrated by the demise last year of a bill that would have permitted more apartment buildings near transit hubs. As for the state's beleaguered power companies, it's not clear that any plan exists. PG&E is resisting pressure to sell its assets to local governments. Governor Gavin Newsom is considering breaking up the company, and the State Utility Commission is looking at a restructuring. None of that answers the fundamental question of how the state will provide reliable electricity in the age of intensifying wildfires. And California is going to avoid this dark path, and we need the political will to carry out bold reforms. Proposition 13 must be repealed and property tax raised. The state legislature needs to pass bills to allow greater housing density and more construction throughout the state. Cities will have to make deals on benefit cuts for pensioners in order to spend more on schools, and the state will probably have to bite the bullet and shell out more money to bury power lines. Everything they're suggesting probably is correct. I'm not doubting anything they're saying, but having the wherewithal to raise property taxes, cut pensions, what they're suggesting here, and to spend more money on schools, and where this money is going to come from, I don't know. It's just the time that we live in, when not enough attention is spelled out from the problems that we're having. Too much is done on folly and things that really don't have a bearing to what your exact resistance is going to be. This is, if you're living in this state, this is a serious issue. Serious issues. California can still save itself from being a failed state, but its days of complacency and easy prosperity are over. To contact the author of the story, notice him at the gives an example to contact the individual who wrote this article. Really great article here, chock full of just valid information, worth your attention. I'm going to put a link inside the description. As always, if this video has been any value to you, please subscribe, leave some comments, and just remember, we live in the times that we are now. You can't do the old things, the old ways of functioning, keeping your head in the sand and not thinking it's someone else's problem. It's not someone else's problem. It's eventually be yours. Until my next video, I'm out.